على رسوله الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي واجعل لي وزيرا من أهلي ربي زدني علما ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح ربي زدني علما اللهم فقهنا في الدين اللهم فقهنا في الدين اللهم فقهنا في الدين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربي هب لي حكما وألحقني بالصالحين ربي هب لي حكما وألحقني بالصالحين ربي هب لي حكما وألحقني بالصالحين آمين يا أرحم الراحمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu once again. Inshallah, today we will be covering ayah number 178 and ayah number 179 of Surah Baqarah. We are doing the tafsir of the Holy Quran and we started from Surah Fatiha and we completed until the ayah 177 of Surah Baqarah last time. Ayah number 177 is also called ayat of Bir. Where we learn what is goodness, and some people have also called it the summary of the things in Islam, and people have made really good infographics and stuff on social media as well, so we can all find it if we Google it, and we put ayah number 2 slash 177, or we Google ayat bir, and we'll find many tafsirs about that ayah too. We'll find a lot has been written and said about those ayahs. There are a few ayahs in the Quran where not few, actually many ayahs in the Quran which are like on which we find much tafsir, and our scholars have taken out many lessons for us, and which cannot be summarized even in like many hours of tafsir, let alone just a few like an hour and a half that we spent together. So if we want to get more details on ayah number 177, then there is a lot of very beneficial and very beautiful stuff available at different places, inshallah. Today we will be continuing to ayah number 178 and 179. These ayat are also called ayat of Qisas. So ayat Qisas, these two ayat together. So inshallah we'll be learning about that and what is Qisas today. So first we'll go over the word by word meaning. Ayah number 178. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم القصاص في القتلى الحر بالحر والعبد بالعبد والأنثى بالأنثى فمن عفي له من أخيه شيء فاتباع بالمعروف وأداء إليه بإحسان ذلك تخفيف من ربكم ورحمة فمن اعتدى بعد ذلك فله عذاب أليم.
Okay, so here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have believed, kutiba, prescribed, it's written for you. And usually even in language, when we say that, even in English or in other languages also, that this has been written for you. So the meaning at many times is that this has been prescribed, this is legalized, this is the law now, this is what is written down, this has been prescribed for all of you. So it is used in that sort of connotation. It's not like just typically like somebody has taken a pen and paper, written it, but it means that it has been prescribed, it has been legalized, this is the law from now on. So this is something here it is used in that connotation. Comes from kataba, to write, but the connotation is not just simply writing. The connotation here is legalizing or prescribing something. So kutiba, it has been prescribed, and who could prescribe except Allah? So it's been prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is implied here, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed. Alaykum comes from two words, ala and kum. Ala refers to upon or for, kum to all of you. So it has been prescribed upon all of you. Okay. Al-qisas, what has been prescribed? Al-qisas. We'll go a bit deeper on this word's meaning, but al-qisas in a short translation is written retribution, although it is a deeper word and there's much more to it. So but we'll talk about it inshallah. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumul qisas. O you who believe, prescribed upon you is qisas, is a retribution. Fil qatla, fi in the matters of, al qatla murder, like when somebody has been murdered. Al qatla refers to somebody who has been murdered, and it could be used for The grammatical construction says that it could be used for a man or a female, or a male or a female, or it could be used for anybody of any status of the society. It is like it's a general term. So somebody who has been murdered. It could be anybody who has been murdered. So for people who owe you who believe, prescribed upon you is a legal retribution in the matter of the one who has been murdered. Al-hurru bil-hurri. Al-hurru, harara, is a free man, a person who's free. And abd, on the other hand, is a person who is a slave. Right? When we say that we are Abdur Rahman, when we say the word Abdur Rahman, that means the slave of Ar-Rahman. We are saying that we are the slaves of Ar-Rahman, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whose name is Ar-Rahman. So we are calling us as a slave. So, but typically speaking, linguistically speaking, the word abd refers to a slave, and the opposite of abd is hur. Hur is what? A person who's free, who's not a slave of anyone. So this is being talked in a societal sense at that time in society in Arabia. So a free man for a free man, wal abdu bil abdi, and a slave for a slave, wal untha bil untha, and untha is for female, and female for a female. So uh, whenever there is a murder, a retribution has been prescribed upon you, and the retribution, what is the way of retribution? A free man for a free man, والعبد بالعبد, and a slave for a slave, والأنثى بالأنثى, and the female for the female. فمن, for is so or but, man, whoever, فمن, so whoever, عفية, is pardoned, from afu, right? So to pardon something, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for afia. We'll ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that He's afu, He pardons greatly. So it comes from the same root, ain, fa, and waw, afa, ya. And waw, we know alif, waw, and ya. These three letters, which are the long vowel letters, they're the weak letters, and they can change form between each other. So they go. So waw here became a ya here. So ofia. Okay. So whoever is pardoned, lahu, for it, it here refers to the murder. Whoever is pardoned for it, min akhihi, from his brother, shay'un, anything, fattiba'u. So ittiba we have learned before is to follow something. Fattiba'u, then follows up, bil ma'rufi, with suitable, wa ada'un, the payment. Day'un is a payment to, it refers to the blood money. Ilayhi, to him, bi ihsanin, with kindness, with ihsan. Ihsan, we've learned before, ihsan is to do the best in something. To do ihsan is to give more than is the haq, to give more than the bare minimum, to give more than what is required. That is ihsan, right? Even in terms of our religion, we learn there are levels: Islam, Iman, and ihsan. And ihsan is basically the best, the most beautiful. That is ihsan, literally speaking. That is the meaning. So here, what this is saying is that qisas is prescribed upon you, O believers, for a murder. When somebody has been murdered, for the murder there's a qisas, and a free man for a free man, a slave for a slave, a female for a female, but whoever is pardoned from it. So there is an option, and we will learn more in tafsir, but there's an option of being pardoned, and whoever is pardoned from getting the punishment of or for it by his brother. And who will be the brothers here? The brothers means the heirs of the person who has been murdered. So maybe a father has been murdered, and the sons of the father, so they become his heirs. Or if the son has been murdered, then the father can decide to pardon the person. And if such a person has been pardoned, the murderer has been pardoned from it by his brother, anything. And there is a concept of blood money, and we will talk about that in a bit. That if there is the pardon, and then a suitable payment has been decided, a blood money has been decided, that okay, this was a murder that was done, and we will not be going for a capital punishment, we will accept blood money instead. And then the blood money has been decided, and they've pardoned the person with the thing of blood money. Then the suitable payment, then they follow it up, the murderer follows it up with suitable payment to the person with kindness. And the person, it should be done in a dignified and a nice and a kind manner, that you should be grateful for it, and to pay the blood money in a kind and in a beautiful and prescribed manner. Dalika, that is takhfifun. This whole provision of blood money and instead of being given a capital punishment for murder. This is that is a concession, min rabbikum, from your Lord, wa rahmatun, and it's a mercy. I think one sister is trying to enter. If anybody can help her.
I'll help her.
Okay, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. So, so whoever, faman, so whoever, i'tada, right, to go beyond, i'tada, to go beyond the limit. So there's a limit and somebody transgresses beyond that limit. So that's a transgression. Ba'da dhalika, ba'da, after, dhalika, that, falahu, then for him is what? Adabun alim, is a punishment which is painful. And in Quran we will find different places there'll be different adjectives referred for punishment, and the punishment is a painful punishment here. Sometimes we'll find adabun azim, sometimes we find adabun alim. Alim is a painful punishment, azim is a big punishment, and there's a principle in Islam called that the punishment suits the crime. So whatever the crime is, and there's a lot of tafsir sometimes about why this kind of a punishment is being given for this kind of a crime, right? So that is significant as well, what word is being used. So here in this ayah, and it's a long ayah, but sometimes when it's a longer ayah, then it's need to focus phrase by phrase, so it's easier to understand then. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, oh, you have believed, prescribed for you is legal retribution for those murdered, the free for the free, the slave for the slave, and the female for the female. But whoever overlooks from his brother anything, then there should be a suitable follow-up and payment to him with good conduct. This is an alleviation from your Lord, or a concession from your Lord, and a mercy. But whoever transgresses after that will have a painful punishment. And the next ayah, ayah number 179.
ولكم في القصاص حياة يا أولي الألباب لعلكم تتقون.
Walakum, and for you. Wa is and, lam is for, kum, all of you. So walakum, and for all of you, fil qisasi, in, fi is in, is the legal retribution. Hayatun comes from ha, ya, and ya. Hay is life. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name is Al Hayyun, right? He is the ever living. So hayat is life. And for you, all of you, in this concept of qisas, there is life for all of you. Ya ulil albab, O men, ya ulil albab, O men of understanding. Albab comes from lub, lam, ba, and ba, and that means lub means akal, understanding, intelligence. Or people of intelligence, or people who have minds, or people who use their wisdom, or people who are not just carried over by just empty emotions or sentiments, or they don't get provoked by just an emotional speech. They use their minds a bit, and they try to understand things deeper. Right? So ya ulil albab, in this concept of qisas, there is life for you, O people of understanding. La'allakum tattaqun. And what is the purpose of all of this? La'allakum tattaqun. La'allakum, la'alla and kum. La'alla means so that, perhaps, maybe, what you will do is kum, all of you, so that perhaps all of you will do what? Will become tattaqun. That means you will gain taqwa, that you will become righteous, that you will save yourself, you'll protect yourself. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, and there is for in this concept of legal retribution of qisas, there is for you saving of life, or people of understanding, so that you may become righteous. So inshallah, it's an important concept to understand this because it's a little different from sometimes what we are used to listening in the name of justice. But when we understand the concept, then we understand how beautifully and how perfectly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's systems give justice and equality to all of us. So in the last ayah, when we learned about the concept in the ayah number 177 last week, we learned about the true spirit of bir and taqwa, like what is goodness and what is taqwa. And now we are now our attention is being directed to matters that are based on these two virtues. Like when we have bir and taqwa, then how is it manifested in the society? And these are important in maintaining the peace and justice in a society, right? And there are two factors that influence relationships between people. Anytime there are people involved, whether it's two or whether there are more, whether there is a whole community, so there will be two factors involved. One is to respect the right of life of others. When we respect the right of other people to live, then it impacts our behavior, and we behave in a certain way. Another thing is when we respect the right of property of others, when we respect the right that everybody has a right to property, and when we have that respect for other people's rights, then it translates into our behavior into some way. And Quran deals with these laws relating to sanctity of life and property right after laying down the basis of bir and taqwa. So bir and taqwa, when you have bir and taqwa, when you have good deeds, when you're doing all these good deeds that we learned about, that we take care of the rights of other people, we establish salah, and we give zakat, and we do all these things. Then what happens is we have this sanctity of life and property, and then how do we maintain them? What are the laws related to that? Then those are being talked about now in these two ayat, which are the ayat of qisas. Now, it's also important to understand what was happening in the society at that time when these ayat were revealed. So at that time, there were people of the book and also people of Arabia who were into idol worship, and all of them had some laws of retaliation. Like if somebody kills somebody or something happens, and what is the law of retaliation? But and which were already there, and we hear things like even in the biblical studies, we hear things like an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and everything. And we know that the concept of retaliation is there. But what they had done was they had turned into a mockery, and they had deprived it of its true spirit, and right. And just as they had done with other laws, they had changed those laws to suit their own things. So the true spirit of that law, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and everything, was equality. That all people will be treated equally, right? And all people will be treated equally, whether they're rich or poor, whether it's a man or a woman, whether it's a high class person or a low class person in terms of the societal status, whether it's a Jewish or a non-Jewish, whether it's a Qurayshi or a non-Qurayshi. The sanctity of life and property of every person has a right to life and property, whatever. Obviously, the standards of the financial standards vary, but no matter how little or how much money you have, or what gender you have, or what social status you have a right to your life, and you have a right to whatever you hold, whatever Allah Ta'ala has blessed you with. You have a right to own it, you have a right to hold it and to do something with it, whatever you do, and people cannot take things unjustly from you and everything. So that was the true spirit of the law, that when things are there, then it should be maintained in such a way. But they had made a mockery out of it, that, for example, Jewish people said the laws for Jewish people is different for the laws of non-Jewish people. Like, for example, they would take money from if they had taken any money from a non-Jewish person, they would say that, okay, even if you don't return it, because you've not taken it from a Jewish person, if you don't return it, then it's okay. We don't have to return it. There's no sin upon us, because it's not, we've taken it from a Gentile person. They're not worth the same as us. So it's okay. We don't have to return it, and we're not liable for anything. If we return it, it's good. If we don't return it, that's fine. But they had different laws for themselves. And similarly, the Quraysh had developed different things for themselves. And even in the society in Yathrib, like it became Medina after the Prophet ﷺ came there. But before the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina, it was Yathrib, and they had two tribes, two big tribes, Aus and Khazraj, and they had a lot of the Khazraj was a bigger tribe, which was almost 3 times the size of Aus. And Khazraj had much more wealthier people. They were more like elite of the society, and Aus were more like common people. And Khazraj would treat them like, okay, if one of ours die, that is equal to three of yours, you know. So they would they would have create things like that. They had created, and if they were subject to blood money, then it would be subject to 3 times the blood money. But if a person of us died, then the Khazraj would just have to pay them 1/3 of the blood money, because they said no, because you are much smaller, and they had created all these things around that spirit of law. Because when you remove the spirit of law, which is equality and impartiality and justice, then you flip the laws to your own advantage and everything. And that is what Quran came to establish and remove all those deviations that people had created. And another thing is, one of the central aim of the Quran is to establish a viable social order on the earth that will be just and ethically balanced. And there's no such thing for us as society less individual. We all live in a society, and Islam never promotes a a way of life in which you live by your own self, or you renounce the world and you just live by yourself and everything. Yes, you can have breaks. Like, yes, sometimes we might need to be by ourselves for a little while and recoup ourselves. Sometimes we need to recharge our batteries and be by ourselves. But we cannot live in a vacuum. We cannot. We have to interact with other people, and we cannot, like, we have families to take care of. We cannot just leave our responsibilities of our family and then just go and say, no, I'll just do my ibadah all day long. We take our intervals for the 5 salahs, and then after that we do whatever we can, and we have to take care of our families as well as do some things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and everything. And in fact, even when we do something for the sake of our families, that is a part of goodness. That is a part of, as we learned, taking care of our things. So everything, even our neighbors, even the people who are traveling, the people who are orphans in the society, we are taking care of all of them as a part of goodness, as a part of um, our Islam, and that we learned in the previous ayat. So here, what we're also learning is the meaning of taqwa in a societal context, right? And that whenever there is more than one human being involved, then there is a third dimension to it as well. There's one dimension of what my perspective. If there are two people involved, if there's me and, let's say, my husband involved, or me or my daughter involved, or me or my parent involved, yes, there are two human beings involved in a whatever interaction there is, and there's my perspective and there's the other person's perspective. There's those two dimensions, but there's also a third dimension, and God is there in our relationship between us, which if anybody ignores, then they ignore it at their own risk, because there are some things that Allah Ta'ala has asked us to do in every relationship. What is the rights of us upon each other and everything, and when those are denied, then there's something that is the repercussion of it that we have to face, and we cannot go beyond that. So in terms of a society, when we live together, we have to abide by a society's rules and everything. That's why rules are really, really important in that sense, because if we don't follow them, then the whole society pays, right? And Islam gives us individual laws and it gives us society laws. So this is one of those laws which are of qisas, which combines uh, the view of an individual and that of a society. And to maintain a society, we need to look at that. And another premise before we understand these two ayat is that our life belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is none of us created ourselves. None of us created ourselves, and none of us created any other human being either. Like, yes, we give birth to we give birth to our children, but they are created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, right? And every life has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the right to take that life belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when somebody transgresses in that matter without any just cause, yes, when there is a just cause, when there's some legal punishment for some reason, then that's a different issue. But without any just cause, if somebody kills another human being, then that is one of the biggest of the crimes against, that's the biggest of the crime actually, when we come to talk about the crimes against each other, when the crime against another human being is involved, right? And that was before the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina, and between the Aus and the Khazraj, when there was a lot of fighting going on, they were fighting going on for a long time, for 100 years. I think there was, forgive me if the number is wrong, but more than 100 years. I don't remember the exact number right now. There was a fighting going on between both of them, and many of their leaders were killed. And what would happen is, as typically we see in a lot of stories and we find out, is one person from one tribe goes and kills one person from another tribe. Then to retaliate, they would go and kill like a few people from their tribe. Then the first tribe will retaliate again and kill some from their side, and this would go on and on and on and on and on. And that way, the war would keep going on and on and on, because one person goes and kills somebody, the other person comes and kills somebody else, and it goes on and on. There's no end to it. So that war had been going on for ages, and their generation have been destroyed. A whole generation was destroyed by this war. But after the Prophet ﷺ came, then there was peace a peace was made between these two groups as well, and there was peace in the whole of Medina. And here Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that, oh, you who believe, now you have all believed, you've all come to believe. Now written upon you, now prescribed upon you is, again, kutiba alaikum, like I was saying before. Kutiba refers to write down. It means it has been legalized, it has been made farz upon you. It's not something that is that's something that you can just say, okay, no, 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 we are going to ignore this, or we're not going to do this, or whatever. It has been prescribed upon you, something that has been legal upon all of you. Alaikum means all of you. Now, what it means, first of all, is on all of you, that a whole society is involved at a community level here. This is not just an individual's job. Of Islam cleans the whole of society, and when Islam came, it changed the way people did everything in their life. Like, it changed people's individual habits, how to go. When people became Muslim, and if you imagine life at that time in Arabia, when people accepted Islam, then after, within a few years, Islam changed the life of people in Arabia, like literally 180 degrees. It changed the way they ate, it changed the way they went to the washroom, it changed the way they went to sleep, it changed the way they had their relationship, it also changed their community, it changed their social dealings with each other, it changed their business dealings with each other, it changed their professional ethics, it changed how they practice their professions, it also changed how they implemented the law and everything. And so it some rules are for individual, and again some rules are for community, and this is one of those rules which is at the community. What it does it mean is that if somebody is murdered, then it is a collective responsibility of the society to find and punish the murderer, not just the relatives of the person. So supposing a person is murdered in a family, then it's not just that family's people who are running around looking for the murderer and what happened, and how to find the person who murdered that. It is a responsibility of the society. It is written upon all of you. So all of you people in the community, you should get together and you should support the person. For example, if like, you should not have any sympathies towards the your sympathy should be towards the victim and not the criminal. So supposing somebody feels, oh my god, if this person gets caught, he murdered somebody, but if he gets caught, then you know what, he will be given a capital punishment and he will be executed and everything. So you know what, it's I feel very sorry for this person and everything, and the person feels sorry. So you know what, I'll hide that person. That there's a family who helps in hiding that person and getting away from the punishment. Then that is something that is not allowed. Even if you feel sympathy towards the criminal, Islam is very just in the sense that our sympathy should be with the victim and not with the criminal. In any crime, the sympathies have to be with the with the victim, in that sense. And we don't aid, and any criminal is able to get away from the punishment only when people support them, and somebody supports them in getting away from it. So first of all, kutiba alaikum tells us, Kutiba alaikum tells us that it is a duty of the society and the community as a whole, and especially here we are talking about the Islamic society. When a society has been put together based on Islamic principles, then it is the duty of everyone to look for, if a single person has been killed, and no matter what that person is, if one person, young or old, man or woman, rich or poor, has been killed, then it is the duty of everybody to go and look for, or help the people, help the society, help the leaders to find the people. And it is not just the blood relatives who will be going that. Also, uh, the reason of investigating of a murder and prescribing it the punishment, it is put upon all people, and it refers to people who are in power, meaning that this is something which is the government needs to do, because not this is something that requires some sort of a power, like some kind of investigation has to be done, some kind of police forces has to be involved, or some kind of a court and legal system has to be involved. Then if somebody is very poor and their family has had something, they might not have the means to run around and do all of this and everything. And whether they have those means or not, it is the government's responsibility. It is the people who are in power. It is their responsibility to go and help them and support them and get the investigations done. It is incumbent upon the government. That is true, but at the same time, what it says, the rule of Qisas says is, at the same time, the government's powers are not unrestricted. There has some restrictions on the power of the government in dealing with the murderer. So the government has a responsibility. The government and the community has a responsibility in finding the murderer and pursuing the murderer. But when it comes to punishing the murderer, then the right of what will be done will be given to the people who are the survivors of the victim, like the wife of the victim, the children of the victim, or the whoever has been killed. So their family members and blood relatives, and their the people who are their inheritors of that person, they will have a right to now decide in this matter. Now, before this rule came from of Qisas and these ayat were revealed, before Islam, there were two ways that people would deal with the murder when a murder has taken place. In Judaism, the only way was to kill the murderer. So somebody who has murdered, the only way out is now the person who has killed will be killed. That person will be executed, obviously by the government, and that person will be executed because he killed somebody else. As opposed to this, Christianity, a lot of people focused on the other extreme, on the other side of it, which was to forgive, forgive, forgive. That no, we should forgive the person, and we should think about, and we should like try to forgive whatever they have done, and they will repent and all that stuff, and we should forgive, forgive, forgive. Islam gave a third option, which was called blood money, that every person that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is a concession and a mercy from your Lord, that a life is precious and a person has to be punished. But when a person is caught and punished, the blood relatives of the person who has been murdered will decide whether the murderer has to be killed, or whether the murderer will pay some blood money. And we'll just talk about blood money in a few minutes, or will the person be paid blood money, or we'll just pardon him completely, that okay, we forgive you completely and we forgive you and everything, and you can go on. So there are the three options that Islam gives whenever there is a murder, right? And even the other side is that the people who decide that what is going to do, the people who are the survivors of the victim, the person who has been murdered, they're the survivors or the family members of that person. Although they decide what is to be done, they don't carry out the punishment themselves. So if they decide, no, we are really, really, like, this person was so important, and this murder was done in cold blood, and we are not going to forgive this person, and they have a right to do say that. And if they all agree that we are not going to forgive the person, then the punishment would be carried out by the state. Nobody is allowed in Islam to go out and take a revenge on an individual basis. You have to go to the court of law. You have to seek it through the court of law and get it done. You cannot just operate outside, and you cannot just be arrogant that just say, okay, somebody killed that person, I'll go and kill and take revenge. Yes, there is a concept of revenge, but the revenge has to be done in a legal way. There is a legal way. There is a way how to do stuff, and this way it does not give complete authority to the government or a complete authority to the person, the survivors either. There's a balance in there, right? And Qisas, the word comes from Qaf, Sod, and Sod, Qasasa, which literally means to chase or to follow something, to walk behind someone, to follow the footsteps of someone. Another word that we hear with the same root is Qissa. And Qissa, what is Qissa? Is a story. Like in even in Hindi and Urdu, we hear Qissa, right? Somebody told me a Qissa. I was the story. And what happens in a story? In a story, a narrator goes back and retraces the step of the main character of the story, that this person did this, and once upon a time there was a king and a queen, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then that happened. So you're retracing the footsteps of, you're following the main characters, and then you're narrating their story, and the listeners are following the the main characters and listening the story and imagining the whole thing. So what the word kissa here in this context means, that the crime of murder will be followed. It will be pursued. It will not be just left. It will be they'll be pursued, and the murderer will be found. And this concept also includes that it will be, the punishment will be given, in which the perpetrator, the one who murdered, will get a punishment similar to what he did to others. So if and more details we'll find later in other parts of the Quran, like in Surah Maida, we learn what are the details for what things is qisas taken when somebody is murdered, when a body part has been cut, or a wound has been given. For all these things, qisas can be taken, but it has to be taken equivalent to the amount of harm that was done, right? So what is equivalent to the harm that was done? So supposing a person was, I'm sorry, my computer's, anyway. So what is the kind of harm that was done? So supposing, let's say a person slapped um, a person I slapped a person. Now that person is allowed to slap me back, but he's not allowed to slap me twice. You only slap him once, then the other person is able to slap them only once as well. So you cannot go beyond the uh, what has been the kind of treatment that has been done to you. You cannot go beyond that either, right? So when somebody is murders somebody, then the treatment, the punishment for them, which is just exactly the same punishment, is you murdered somebody, now you need to be killed. That's the punishment for you. You need a death sentence, and that's an even retaliation, right? So anyone who is killed, qatla, fil qatla, will refers to anybody who has been killed. Does not mean that if a free man kills a slave, then he will not be punished. It does not mean that. It means anybody who kills anybody will be punished for it, right? And whether it's a slave or a owner or a man or a woman, everybody will be punished for it. And about this ayah, it is said that in the incidents about Revelation, it was said that there was a feud between two Arab communities, and one of them was stronger than the other. And the other, who they said that we will kill us for every slave that has been killed, we will kill every free man of yours, and for every woman that you have killed of ours, we'll kill every man of yours. And this verse was revealed to say that no, this is not permissible. You can, yes, qisas is legal, but even in terms of when there was a war situation, when then so many people had been killed, and let's say there are 100 people killed on one side and 90 people killed on the other side, and now after that they have become Muslim, and now but those situations are still unresolved. Okay, what happens to people who let's say a week before, 2 weeks before, these people were on war and they have killed each other. Now they have become Muslims, and now they are not fighting anymore. There's a peace between them now, but their feelings are still sore. They still have this thing that, okay, but this one, they killed our people and we killed their people, but then they killed more of our people. So what will happen in that situation when at a community level so many people have been killed in a war? Then but they have become brothers now, and what happened then was, so some place 100 people have been killed, the other 90 have been killed. So now you have a compensation due for 10 people who have been killed. And it's not that just because you have that compensation to take, you will try to take more than is just for yourself. You will only have to take what is just. Also here it refers to al-hurra bil-hurri. Doesn't mean that just because one free man was killed, you will go and kill any other free man. Al-hurra, al means something specific, right? So when somebody killed, only that person would be killed. So it's not that what somebody people would do what at that time was, somebody was an owner of a slave, and that man, a free man, he killed somebody. What he would say is, okay, I'll kill that person. You know what? One person has to be killed, but you know what? Instead of me, kill my slave. That's fine. But what Islam is saying, no, that's not allowed. Whoever murdered that person will be killed. And even now, today, sometimes we see, even in a lot of places, when we hear of different stories of different crimes, we see that a man does a crime and then he runs away from that community, and then people get together and they punish his wife or his children or his brother. They're tortured or oppressed in the name of justice and everything, but it is not their fault, right? The person who I'm sorry, my this eye keeps closing. But so what happens is, sometimes people do is they start troubling his wife or children or brother. What here Islam's teaching us is, just treat the criminal in that way, not his family members. It's not other people's mistake. It's not, and you cannot trade in a life for another. Like if a free man has murdered, then it is that free man who will be punished for it. If a slave has murdered somebody, then that slave will be punished for it. If a female has killed someone, that female will be punished for it. So it would be exactly the person who did the murder, that person will be punished. Not just, you cannot just trade in that, okay, this person has a high rank in society, so that we will not punish that person and we'll go to another person and we will do that. So that is not allowed, right? And this is a concession that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, this concession of um, again, what they can do is another thing, sorry, I was saying is that instead of instead of killing that person, the people can also opt for the blood money. They can opt for that, we will forgive this person and we will accept blood money instead. And what is the blood money? Arabs at that time had the concept of blood money, and that was 100 camels, which was taken as blood money until the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And we also, for the people who've heard of who learned the Sirah, we've learned that in the Sirah that the Prophet ﷺ, the father of Prophet ﷺ, his grandfather had made a vow that when they found the well of Zamzam, and he had made a vow that what I will do is I will sacrifice one of my sons. If I get 10 sons, I will sacrifice one of my sons. And for this, and then when the time came to sacrifice, and the out of the sons which was chosen, the son which came out was was Abdullah, which was the father of the Prophet ﷺ, which was before the Prophet ﷺ was born. But then while he was going to sacrifice, that Abdullah was very, very dear to all his family. He was the youngest, and he was very beloved to all of the family, and it was a very hard time for them. But then obviously he made a promise. So Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ, he was taking Abdullah to be sacrificed, when on the way he met somebody who said that why don't you drop lots, and then what they used to do was they used to spin an arrow, and then they used to find out which way to take. And he said that what they decided was every time they would put 10 camels on one side, they'll write 10 camels, and they would put Abdullah on one side, and then would spin the arrow to find out. And then anytime the arrow would come on Abdullah, they would increase it to 10 more camels, right? So 10 camels like that. So they would increase this, and until it came to 100 camels, and then it came on camels instead of Abdullah. So then they decided, okay, we have to slaughter 100 camels instead of Abdullah, and that will be the blood money. So from that time, the blood money was decided to be as 100 camels. And when Islam came, it kept the same thing. It didn't change that amount of blood money of the life of one person, which was 100 camels. And the standard was still 100 camels. And which also teaches us one principle in Islam is that don't when you come to a community, when people accept Islam, or when people become Muslims, or a whole community becomes Muslim, then don't change people so much, don't change people more than necessary. Only change those things where reformation is needed. The things where don't people have a certain lifestyle, people have a certain way of doing things, and every person has a certain culture background, has a certain thing background, and whatever does not clash with Islam, there's no need to change it. There's no need to unduly create a lot of havoc in people's lives and make things difficult for them. Whatever needs to be changed should be changed, and they should be allowed to continue that. And so at that time, from then, obviously now the money has been standardized since then for 100 camels, and which is also used in fiqh. We learn that it could be 100 camels, or 1,000 dinars, or 10,000 dirhams, or 9 pounds of silver, according to current weights and measure. And if how the concept of qisas would work is, let's say a person is killed and that person has many sons. Now they will be brought to the court, and the court will ask, okay, this is the murderer, we found the murderer, and this is the murderer, and you have 5 sons, and now you 5 sons have a choice of whether you want that this person to be executed, or whether you want to get a death penalty, basically, or whether you want this person to pay the blood money, or you want to forgive him completely and without taking any blood money or anything. It is your choice what you want to do. Now these 5 sons, if they are the only survivors of the person who was killed, now these 5 people have a choice. Now if they all choose to forgive, then okay, they choose to forgive, matter closed. If they all choose that okay, this person should get a death penalty instead, then that person will get a death penalty, and that person will be killed, given a death sentence and killed. However, if and if all of them decide together that okay, we'll get blood money, then instead, then a blood money will be given, and that will be distributed amongst all these people. Now the problem arises when if the 4 of them say, okay, we want this person to be killed, but only one of them say, no, we'll forgive this person, and we will accept blood money instead. Now, if even one of the survivors of the murdered says that we will forgive and take blood money instead, but the life is only one, the life cannot be divided. Blood money can be divided, but life cannot be divided. There's only one life. So what Islam teaches us, and that we learn from the books of fiqh, that if even one person says that we will forgive this person and not give the person the death penalty, then that death penalty will not be given. Okay, but now After that, this person has to give blood money, which goes to all these people. And out of these people, whoever wants to say, I do not want to take my share and I want to forgive that person, can just refuse for their own share. And other people, it is up to them whether they accept the share or whether they forgive that person, right? That only. So everybody has a chance like that to make the qisas in that sense. And by giving this direct power over the life of the murderer to the people who are the survivors, what happens? Why is this done? What does it do? This, first of all, it gives the people who are survivors, it gives them a means of healing for the the injury that has been inflicted upon them, because losing a family member and learning that this person has killed my family member is not an easy thing to do. And when you face that person, then, and when Islam gives the right of, or the control or direct power of the life of the murderer in the hands of the survivors, it's a means of healing for them. It's a means of, yes, whoever's gone has not come back, but cannot come back, but they receive some kind of a solace out of that. And also, if they choose to forgive and show compassion to the murderer and his family, then it leads to some kind of beneficial results in the society too, that people are grateful to each other, people recognize each other's kindness, because that this was very hard to do and yet you did it. And then it leads to some kind of a positive things in the society. Also, if a blood money is accepted instead of the death penalty, then it could be a means of source of help and support to the survivors. Maybe the person who was killed was the only earning member of the society, and or the survivors are very much in need, or they're very poor. Then the blood money that is given to them could be a source of help and support for them. So Islam gives that option of, there are ways to take, there is qisas, but then you can choose to forgive. And if anybody chooses to forgive, so faman ufiya lahu, right? If anyone chooses to forgive for it, min akhihi, so from his brother. So for another thing is that you receive a forgiveness from your brother. And there's another very beautiful concept here which says is, despite this crime that has happened in a society, so we are talking about Islamic society here, a society where they're all Muslims, and there are crime that has happened either before they accepted Islam or after they've accepted Islam. The A crime has happened, and there are people who are upset with each other there, and genuinely so. There's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of there's a lot of feelings going on here. Yet at the same time, all and justice is being pursued. There's a court case and things are going on. Still, despite all of that, Islamic brotherhood still exists between all of you. There is still, despite this crime and despite this frustration between each other, there might be angry words that are said amongst each other. There might be some fist fighting that has happened. There might be some people who are really furious against each other. Despite that, there is your relationship of brotherhood, which is Islamic brotherhood, still exists. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another part in the Quran, in Surah Al-Hujurat, 49th Surah, ayah number 10, Innamal mu'minuna ikhwah. All believers are but brothers. So there is a relationship based on the deen. We are brothers in deen or sisters in deen, sisters in Islam or brothers in Islam. We are brothers and sisters because of our deen, and that relationship exists even if, and first of all, that relationship does not mean that we turn a blind eye towards, or we let somebody do injustice against the other. Yes, there's a concept of justice and there's a concept of brotherhood. There are two concepts which go side by side as well. Just because we are brothers or just because we are sisters does not mean that one person can oppress the other or one person can do injustice against the other. That said, it also means that even when there is a crime that has happened and there's justice being pursued, we still recognize our manners and our conduct towards each other at the same time, and we still recognize that we are still brothers. And if one brother forgives another one, if there is all the survivors of the person who has been murdered, they agree or they decide to forgive the other person, and then whatever has been decided, the murderer has to follow up that payment that has been decided, the dine that has been decided, the blood money that has been decided. They have to follow that up in a suitable way, what has been decided, and suitable payments in a way that is beautiful with ihsan. They should be grant any reasonable demand and compensate beautifully. That what that means is be grateful and first of all acknowledge their kindness, that they could have asked for a death penalty for me, but they spared me and they asked for blood money instead, then first of all, you should the person who is a criminal has to now pay graciously according to the custom, whatever is the custom of that place, according to kind or cash, whatever needs to be paid. Another thing by ihsan here is that other people in the society don't put the aggravated party to further misery. What that means is, just because a family or some people have agreed to forgive the person and take blood money instead, don't shame them or humiliating them, saying things like, oh, you sold the life of your loved one for this much money, or you just cared about the money and then you've taken that. No, it is a right that Allah Ta'ala has provided them, and if they are exercising their right, then just don't say things like, blood is more precious than money or everything. Yes, blood is precious, but Islam is also a very practical religion, gives the right. The 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 things in the hereafter are for the hereafter, which Allah Ta'ala will decide on the day of judgment, and the justice of this world is the justice of this world. So here you have a chance of what to do, and Allah Ta'ala has given us these three options, and we could exercise, a group could exercise any of these, a person or a group, whoever's involved as the survivors, they could exercise any of this. And when somebody is following some Islamic commandments, whatever is allowed in Islam, and whatever a way out and a way of ease is allowed in Islam, then we should, and comes to any of the matters for that instance, then we shouldn't shame another person into that or pass comments because, oh my, oh, look at them, they are like this, they didn't even care for the life, their son got killed and here they are accepting money for it, and how shameless, oh, what things like that. We should not say it, because this is meant to, Allah Ta'ala has, these are concessions given from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. These are concession and mercy given from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Yes, Allah Ta'ala knows more than us how much those people are hurting. Whoever loses a family member, whatever their heart is going through, every heartbeat, what their heart is going through, Allah Ta'ala knows that. And Allah Ta'ala knows how to calm their heart, how to soothe their heart, and what all options are there to them. Just by giving them an option of that you have a power over the life of the murderer, and then you have the choice to forgive, that Allah Ta'ala knows how, what kind of a healing it will be for that person. And Allah Ta'ala knows if some people are in need, or if they choose to go that way, and he has allowed for that, then don't try and stand in between the commands of Allah just because you feel that a higher road should have been taken, or just because me and or somebody else feels that no, you should have asked for a death penalty, then we shouldn't do that. That is not something that is recommended by Islam, and we should, Ihsan tells us that we should all be kind, and we should all be uh, like that towards the, first of all, the right of the survivors cannot be taken away from them. I cannot decide on their behalf and no, 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 you should forgive. Neither can I tell on their behalf, or try to influence them that no, no, you should take a death penalty for that person. Whether it's harsher or softer, the decision, the proceedings have to be done by the government and the Islamic State, or whoever is the chief of or the deputy of that time, or the courts or the established courts. But the decision of how to retaliate has to be taken by the individuals, and then it will be carried out. The society will help to carry it out in whatever has been decided. But now, whatever has been decided, after that, now no one should exceed the limit. So, so whoever after that transgresses, after that, falahu adabun alim, then for him is the painful punishment. What does that mean? This means that now everything's decided. The concept of qisas is there. Some kind of a blood money has been decided, and now the people have to pay that money and everything. First of all, as believers, um, even as believers, first one thing to understand is this ayah started as ya ayyuhalladina amanu, and then at the end we are learning that for them is the painful punishment, and these are all believers here. We are not talking about disbelievers here. All, so first of all, this tells us that even as believers, if we do injustice towards anything, we will be punished for it. And some people develop this notion that just because we are believers, oh, we will not be punished. Oh, no, no, Allah Ta'ala will save us from anything. Just because we said the kalima, or just because we are Muslims, we can behave in any way. We can behave like in indecent practices. We can cheat people in business. We can drink. We can do anything, and we'll not be punished for it. First of all, is whenever ayahs are addressed to the believers and then there is some punishment mentioned, it should remind us, it's the lesson is for all of us, that the even as believers, yes, inshallah, we have high hopes that Allah Ta'ala will forgive us and will take us to Jannah, and will forgive all of our shortcomings and mistakes. But that does not give us an open license to commit mistakes. We try our best to protect ourselves from mistakes and sins. And if things happen despite us trying to protect ourselves the most, then we have expectations in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He will forgive those things that we did unintentionally, or we did because we had only that much knowledge at that time. I didn't know any better at that time. I didn't know any better 2 months ago or 1 year ago, and I said something or I did something that was in my ignorance, or when I didn't know about the other side of the situation, and I said or did something and by mistake or unintentionally, and which was hurtful for somebody or which was not correct, then inshallah I have hopes that I'll keep seeking forgiveness and Allah Ta'ala will forgive me. But as a believer, we cannot use that premise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ghafurur Rahim, and then we use that premise to do injustice in the society. That is not allowed in Islam. And as believers, we will also be accountable for that, and we will have to pay qisas for that. And one of the things that we learn in when we learn more about the Day of Judgment, that there are different phases on the Day of Judgment, but right before the entry into Jannah, after people have judgments have been done, people have crossed the bridge and everything, and there are people who are destined for Jannah. They're all good people, all destined for Jannah. At the Kantara, which is the final place, a final like curved sort of a bridge before. Some people say it's a part of the Sirat that we will have to cross, and some people say it is a separate bridge altogether. There are different opinions about that, but anyway, the last stage where people have to pay qisas to each other, like any believer who hurt another believer with anything, whether by words or by actions or by things or by business practices or in any way, then you'll have to pay your dues to each other. And how will you pay dues that day? That day, money is not a currency that day. That day, what is the currency? The currency that day is good deeds. So whatever time we spent in learning the Quran, in memorizing the Quran, in doing any good deeds and everything. One thing is to do good deeds, but our scholars say it's much easier to do good deeds, but it's much harder to protect those good deeds, because to protect those good deeds means that the way we behave with people is such that on that day people will not be suing us for our good deeds, and we might have to give our good deeds to them. All these good deeds that we work so hard for day and night, we could lose them like that. And the Prophet ﷺ told us, the bankrupt would be the person on the Day of Judgment who would come with mountains upon mountains of good deeds, but he'll have to give away all of them because he was rude to someone, or he was unjust to someone, and he was do this. And he had all this. He prayed salah, he gave zakat, he did hajj, he did all these things. He had all these mountains. He gave so much charity, he gave so much good deeds. He had so many good deeds, but then all those good deeds will go away because they'll be given away because this person was not just to other people, right? So first thing to remember here is that being believer comes with doing good and also to protect good. We do good, that we learn about the goodness in last ayat, that what is good. We do all those good, but then we have to protect it also, because even despite doing good, we might end up in a punishment if we don't protect them, if we are unjust to other people, if we harm other people. Every human being is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just because some of us might have power over the others, we cannot behave unjustly. Also, this refers to that exceeding the limit here refers to that supposing the people who are the murderer and his family, they are ungrateful for the people who forgive them and ask for blood money. Now, if they're ungrateful to the people who forgave them and of the benefit, and then use it as a cover for further acts of troubling that family of the person who has been murdered already and doing more injustice. Now, this was an act of kindness done to you and given that blood money, but now they hold that money. Oh, I will give you next month. Oh, come tomorrow. I will give you tomorrow. Or come next week. Then I will give you tomorrow. Or they do further injustices against, just because they are in a position of power, they try to do more injustices against these people. And or they say that, you know what, if supposing in a place they say, okay, a rich person is killed, there's like let's say the blood money for an argument's sake is $100,000, and they say, okay, we'll give $100,000. But then if a poor person is killed and they know this poor family has nothing to live on and everything, they're like, okay, it's $100,000, but we'll give you only 50,000, and you just agree on 50,000. You force them to agree on 50,000 because they need it, and you force them to agree on 50,000, although the correct amount was 100,000, but you force them and you make them come to it. Then that is transgressing the limit, because just because another person can't work against you, they don't have much power against you, then you don't abuse your position in the society, or don't abuse your the power that you have for any reason, whether it's a religious authority, whether it's a social authority, whether it's a financial authority, whatever kind of authority you have. So murderer and the family should not exceed the limit. Another party that could exceed the limit is the family of the person who has been murdered. Let's say the family who has of the person who has been murdered says, okay, you know what, we will accept this blood money. They do all this contract and they say that, but even while saying that, they had bad intentions. So what they do is they accept all this blood money, but all the while they are planning to to kill the person who murdered the murderer on the side anyway. They said, okay, we'll accept all this money, and then they like they plan and plot and they kill the person anyway after that as well, after receiving the money too. Now they have transgressed the limit, their limit. Once they forgave the person and once they decided on something and it was agreed upon that, okay, instead of, they had a choice to decide, and that time they decided what they did. But once you've decided everything, then stick to your bargain. Then don't cross your limit. Now your limit was that you received that blood money. Those person are paying you that amount, and they pay you and you receive it. And now you have to stick to your sides of the thing. And all parties should honestly and sincerely accept and honor the agreement now, right? And so this would also, anything transgressing would also basically like it will also include things like filing a false case against somebody, that or a doubtful case of murder. You don't know for sure if this person has murdered, but you file a case against him anyway, and you're not sure about the evidences, but somebody plants an evidence and does those things. Now all those are transgressing the limits because this was not your thing to do, right? And also somebody pardons somebody totally or with the blood money, and then after the pardon, after some time, they say, we want to reopen the case. Now that's not done. Once you've settled on something, it is done. Now there's no going back to it now and then. Now, okay, the pardon was done and everything, but now I feel, no, I was thinking more, and now I feel, oh, I could have asked them for blood money instead, but I didn't ask for it and everything. You settled something, so now stick to it. You made an agreement, now stick to it. You were given those options and those options were legitimate, but now don't try to abuse the other party as well, just because you think that you can try to get more out of it for your own benefit. So the whole concept, and there's obviously much more to it in the fiqh matters, and which is covered in more details by our scholars. But as a broad concept, this is the concept that when somebody is murdered or somebody is harmed, then there is a concept of that they should be held accountable for it. The state should go after that and they should get that person, and no injustice should be done because just because somebody belongs to a certain level of a society, whether it's lower or higher, or more educated or less educated or whatever, there shouldn't be any injustice. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just, and he loves justice, and he's given us laws which have a very balance for all authorities. It doesn't put too much authority in the hands of the government. It doesn't put too much authority in the hands of individual either. So there's a balance in the laws of Islam, and also by putting the part of execution of the contract in the hands of the government or the power, it prevents those people who are the inheritors of the person who has been murdered. It saves them from doing anything wrong or excessively in the heat of their anger, because sometimes people might be, and rightly so, they might be very, very angry and very emotional at that time, and in that anger or emotion they might end up doing something excessively or more than their limits, and Islam prevents them from doing so by putting that execution of the decision in the hands of the government or the authorities of that time. And equivalent to our time, it would be, let's say, police and the judicial system and everything. So whatever is carried out, it's carried out according to that. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about this qisas, why is this qisas and what happens in this qisas. And if we look at it from the point of view of just normal human logic and everything, like, okay, one person was killed, why does another person have to be killed now? Like, why shouldn't we just forgive the other person? Wouldn't that be a better way to do it? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that, you know what, if your minds are just influenced or softened by just emotions and blank emotions and sentiments and just emotional speeches, then you wouldn't appreciate the significance of this law. Only the people who are wise will understand that in this law of qisas, there is life for not just you but the whole society. Human logic might not understand it just at one glance, right? So first of all, the first thing we're learning is, don't call qisas bad. Don't call that that the purpose of retribution or the purpose of thing as a bad thing, because what Islam says is when a murderer knows the punishment, when this punishment is, and there are some, and this thing actually it creates a lot of controversy at different places, but there's no denying that there are some severe punishments in Islam, and there are some very strong punishments. But it is also true that those punishments are very, very rarely carried out. Even if we go to the Islamic history, they are very, very rarely carried out because there's so many ways out of it. But those punishments, the what are the punishments, are made very, very public. And what does Islam teach us? That don't tell people the details of the crime, right? It tells us to say to hide the details of the crime which are committed, but make it open, like make it very well known about the hard the like like people say that okay, when somebody steals and their hands are cut off, and when there are when somebody kills and they're killed for that, and no, you shouldn't feel like that. Everything these are all um, Islam says let those punishments be very well known, because just by letting those punishments, having those punishments in place, you will prevent much of future crime. Because when you don't have those punishments in place, and when we don't when you let people get away with murder, then you are encouraging other people to take that route as well. Yeah, then you're encouraging people in a society to do more, to engage in more crimes, including murder. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Maida, ayah number 32, that killing one person is like killing all mankind, and killing, except if it is in the case of qisas. And preservation of one life is the preservation and sanctity of life of all, because it's the preservation of the it's not just an individual, it's the whole society that you are preserving from a whole like a corruption and from injustice and murder. And when you let murder, and we see so much of that in today's society, that when people are not punished, then another person takes the gun and goes around shooting children, or goes around shooting people around. And when they are not punished enough, when they're not when it's not talked about enough, and then what happens is this, it promotes those things in the society even more. And also what we learn is that it is only the taqwa of Allah that can bring people to life, right? The When we have the taqwa of Allah, then it can stop us from things. And if we look today, we see a lot of the same kind of crimes and the same kind of behaviors that were there before Islam. Even before Islam, this kind of attitude that people would be killed and there will be nobody to see, there would be nowhere that they could get justice from and everything. Those things were prevalent before Islam, and now we see, unfortunately, even in Muslim countries, we see that. And in fact, the thing is that today in the world, there is no country which follows there are countries who are sympathetic towards Islamic law, but there's no country which follows Islamic law how it should be followed at the moment. That is the truth of this world right now. There's no country that follows that. Even countries that call themselves Muslim countries, they're sympathetic towards Muslim law, towards Islamic guidelines, and they do that, but they are not also they're not following the Islamic law like that, right? So what this is teaching us is that don't develop any false notions of generosity or respect or considerations for nobility and status of the person involved. Say, let's say a person who killed another person was someone like very noble, otherwise was a very good person, and then don't develop these things in your mind. Oh my God, this person was such a famous person. He's such a nice person. He does so much charity. Yes, he murdered somebody by he murdered somebody, but otherwise he's such a nice person. So maybe we should be look at his behavior and kind to him or everything. And another view today is that today a lot of psychology promotes this view that all crimes are committed by people because of their emotions, or they have they were too emotional at that moment, so they should be excused for it. He was too angry and everything, and he was, or he was not very rational at that moment, or he had a lot of mental confusion and he had a lot of mental complications, and that's why. And we see that a lot nowadays. And and they say things like to sentence a murderer to something is like punishing a person who's ill. This person is just like mentally ill, he's not like, he didn't he murdered a few people, but he was just mentally ill. So we should look at that, and maybe instead of giving that person a death sentence, this person should be treated with education and training and psychological and mental rehabilitation and things like that. And Quran removes all these doubts. And this is not something new. These kind of thoughts were there before as well. People use these kind of things to get criminals out of any punishment even before Islam. And this, all these, it's just new words. It's just the packaging is different. We call it with new words. We call it mental health nowadays sometimes, and we call it like all this. This person was just confused, and he was just mentally ill. That's why he just went and killed a few children. Um, we call it things like that, but people used to make excuses for things like murder at that time too, before Islam. Quran removes all these doubts and things and points us to the wisdom that is there behind the law of retaliation. People of wisdom should indeed be able to see that there is life for them in this. If a murderer is not punished, then there is a very clear danger that the crime will spread more, right? And sometimes, like we know that sometimes if in our body there is some part which is contaminated, or there's some part which has got cancer, or some part which has got a very high like it has got very high level of infection that cannot be cured anymore, and that infection is now spreading to other parts of the body, then a surgeon, what that surgeon will have to do is that surgeon will have to surgically remove that part of the body to let the person survive. Because if they don't remove that part which has the contamination, or which has the part which is rotten in an organ, then that might lead to the death of the individual itself. When a surgeon does that, we don't call the surgeon cruel. We call that surgeon did something to let the person live, and that surgeon did something to help the person survive by taking out the part um, that was harmful for the rest of the body. Similarly, when somebody commits murder or robbery or adultery, then those people are spreading things in the society which are harmful for the society. And by enforcing this law, that we will avoid people exceeding the bounds of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and committing injustices and aggressions against each other. And so these, again, when we see in the law of Qisas, if if there is a whole group of people which are the survivors of the person who has been murdered, and even one person says that we will forgive this person, that the person will not be killed, right? But so if we look at it, there's a lot, always rahma and mercy always precede, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always praises more. And even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would prefer. There was a case of murder at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam indicated that he preferred the way of mercy more, and the family then decided to forgive the other people. But the Prophet ﷺ would always lean towards mercy more. But then just to have that punishment in place, that there is this punishment, and you don't know whether you will be, if you commit this crime, you don't know whether you will be punished, or you don't know whether you will be left alone, then that would stop a lot of people. Yes, there are some extremes in every society, and there are all who will do the crime anyway, but there are a lot of people who are in the gray area, who are induced into the crime. They want to do the crime, but then they're also afraid of doing the crime. And those people, if we are able to stop even those majority of people from committing those crimes, then that preserves the whole society. And by saying that these are the people who will understand that there is life in this, are the people of albab, people of understanding, people of lub. Lub is akal, the mind and intelligence, and people who use their mind. Don't be influenced by people giving you empty, oh my God, this person, look at him. And what they do is, anytime there's somebody has committed murder and they want to save that person and not give that person punishment, what they will do is they'll give you a whole life of that person on, he was such a nice boy, and he was such a, he was such a great kid, and he was such a beautiful, lovely child, and I don't know what happened to him. And they'll give you all these, and they'll try to emotionally blackmail the the media today would try to emotionally paint a picture of this person, that he was such a nice kid, and what happened to him, when they want to absolve somebody of a crime. But when they want to put somebody in, the same other side, when they want to portray somebody as criminals, what they would do is, they would not talk of this individual. They would talk about, look, he belongs to this society, and they promote, and he must be a terrorist, or he must be a that. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us is, be people of understanding, use your minds and think beyond what is being sold to you. Think beyond emotionalism that is sold to you all the time. Don't let people fool you um, by provoking your emotions in a wrong way or everything. Justice is justice, and justice is justice for everyone. Then yes, every crime is a crime. Anybody who does crime, whether it's a person who's a Muslim or not a Muslim, if it could be a believer or not a believer, every person who does a crime has to be accountable for that crime, both in this world and the next. It is not just the next world. Yes, in this world too, you need to be accountable. We can't just take that extreme of either just punishing or just forgiving. And people who have intelligence understand that this is something which is a rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is something that is something that Allah ta'ala has given us as a mercy. And by enforcing this law, by enforcing this law or any law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that matter, we will avoid accessing the bounds of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will avoid committing injustices and aggressions against each other. We will be righteous, and that is taqwa. So one part of taqwa that we learn through these ayat of Qisas today is that one aspect of taqwa is that when we behave with each other, we realize that anytime I am as a human being in an interaction with any other human being, whether it's my own children, whether it is my own husband, my parents, whether it's my neighbor, whether it's my community, whether it's my students, whether it's my teachers, whether it's anybody that I interact with, there is a third dimension to it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. He's the one who always watches, and he's the one who's always hearing, and he knows how I am reacting and what are my intentions. Yes, I might do mistakes, but how I interact in those interactions, I have to be careful, because I don't want to do anything against the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because I will be accountable for it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the taqwa, his taqwa, that anytime we interact with anyone, that we are careful and we are fearful of him and him alone and not anybody else, and we are able to react, and we are able to we respect not just our right, we respect the right of other people to their life and their property, and we hold ourselves and other people accountable, and our sympathies don't go with people who don't deserve our sympathy. Our sympathies go towards the victims. When somebody goes through a hard time, then our sympathies goes towards them, and we help them get out of it, and we observe the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that respect. May Allah ta'ala accept us coming together today for his sake, and may Allah ta'ala reward us for it, and any goodness that comes from today's talk is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and any shortcomings are from myself, because I'm human and open to mistakes. May Allah ta'ala forgive me and accept all of it from all of us, regardless of our mistakes. Just as Allah ta'ala united us as sisters in Islam in this world, may Allah ta'ala reunite us as sisters in Islam under his arsh on the day of judgment, and then once again in Jannatul Firdaus. Subhanakallahumma ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.